What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Cheeky Midweeky. We have an unbelievable guest. We have Ed Cosner on the show. Anybody that, we get tons of people talking about how great the Buddy Morris episode was, and Buddy was phenomenal. I think this is going to be right up there from listening to Ed and I talk before we even hit record. Ed, briefly introduce yourself, and then please just keep talking because that was awesome.
I'm Ed Cosner. I have my own little private business now, Power Sports Strength Conditioning. It's in my garage, air conditioned in South Texas, because I'm hardcore, but fuck, I ain't sweating that damn much. But mostly online training now. I had coached for a long time, and I took a little step away, but that's it. Doing a lot more, trying to do a lot more with masters athletics and masters, but just older population. Using some of the tricks that I have to keep competing at 62 years old. I'm still out there competing. I'm still throwing in Highland Games. I'm still trying to lift in contests. And I like to show off.
If you're not going to say it, then I'm going to say it to everybody that's listening or watching this, man. The man was talking about pre-show. He was doing deficit deadlifts, glue ham raises, seated box jumps. Like, he's training probably tougher than I'd say a lot of these fitness influencers in the world, or even some of these kids, like, dude's getting after it still, and he inspires me. That's why you can kind of hear it in my voice. I'm looking forward to this episode as much as hopefully you guys are. Like, Ed has a phenomenal background. If you look at his website, like, that picture of you were shredded in that very first picture on the
bodybuilding
page.
Yeah, that's because I was powerlifting and I wanted to drop down a weight class, and I was asking the bodybuilders in the gym, what they did for diet and stuff. This is coming from a guy that walked in with Whataburger in a bag, So the old man that owned the gym, Bob, said, "Boy, there ain't no way in hell you could do that." I'm like, "Excuse me? Oh, fuck you talking about?" "Yeah, I can." So I got with them. I dieted down. I did 3 shows. The normal powerlifter physique, huge back, big ass legs. Turn around. Is that guy got a chest at all? Throw up a bicep pose, like, no, he ain't got no bicep either. Big ass triceps. Look good from behind, look bad the front. So,
amen.
But I had fun.
Amen to that.
Yeah, I had fun doing it. It was, I didn't have fun dieting. But
what was the worst part?
The last 2 weeks, trying to get the carb depletion. You go like 0 carbs for a few days, then you put like 50 grams, which ain't very much, 75 grams. And I was waiting tables at the same time downtown on San Antonio on a Riverwalk in a nice restaurant called Boudreaux's, serving blackened prime rib, coconut shrimp. So I put it down in front of people, like, shaking. Like,
don't eat it. Don't eat it.
You're not gonna eat all that. I'm just gonna lick the salt off of it. And I'd go back in the back of the kitchen and eat, boiled chicken, vegetables.
Oh. So vegetable. Okay, yeah. So you weren't eating like no pastas, no starches, nothing.
Not that last 2 weeks. But you start slowly adding it in, but it's all with like distilled water, everything else, so your body doesn't hold a bunch of water. It's a real trick, and it's a real heartbreaker, because like the last few days before you weigh in, you look like crap. You're depleted. You got nothing. You got no cut. You got no muscle. You're looking down like, Jesus. I dieted down from 240 to 220, 215. I'm like, I don't have any muscle. Where the hell did it all go? And then the night, you start adding your carbs over a few days, and then the night before, after I did my weigh-ins, I think I woke up at like 3, and all of a sudden there was all these cuts, all this muscle just shredded. It's like, oh hell yeah! I spent the next 2 hours posing,
just staring at yourself,
which was probably more posing work than I did the entire 16 weeks that I was dieting. if I put up a video of it, you would know it. I'm like up there, like, oh wait a minute, what do you got? Oh yeah, I gotta do. Nah, shit. And then I got my idiot friends in the front row yelling, "Oh my God, is a powerlifter with abs," throwing Oreo cookies at me. And other friends trying to remind me to smile. I'm like, smile. I'm up here and I got underwear to cover more than this. I'm trying. There's a great friend of mine. She's a professional bodybuilder and a hell of a power lifter back in the day. Mary Ellen Warman. Mary Ellen was there. She's like, "Oh my God, you got striations in your glutes." Grabbed my posing trunks, pulled them up my crack of my rear end, and shoved me out on stage. So the first 20 seconds of my posing routine, I'm trying to get my posing trunks out of my ass. It was the experience of a lifetime.
What are people not like? First of all, I didn't know anything about that with bodybuilding. Like, so many people listening to this right now they probably thought, oh, bodybuilding, it's, you get to look great and it sounds like way more fucking work than anybody ever thought.
It was a lot of work. It was a lot of work. But it was challenging. I'd already won several powerlifting championships. I was having fun doing that some. Just kind of looking for another challenge. And I only did it for 3 years. I won back then the NPC had level 3, 2, and 1. So the NPC was the National Physique Committee. So 3 was like the novice, and I won that. 2 was the intermediate one, so I won that in South Texas. But when I got to the top, when I got to a national qualifier, I had cut my hair back when I had hair.
You had hair? How long was it? How long was your hair?
Well, I thought it was all one length, but it was really just thin on the top and a friggin' mullet. And, beat up shoulders from so many years of lifting already. Like, I couldn't comb it, so it had a flip. I showed a picture to my wife, and she looked at it like, don't show anybody that picture. It's great right there, but we just chopped the head off. And the Fu Manchu back then.
Oh, you had a Fu Manchu back then too?
I had the Fu Manchu so I could accent this big-ass friggin' chin that looked like Dudley Do-Right.
I mean, that's a real men back in the day had the good solid jawline, you know what I mean?
Oh, I got a solid jawline. Yeah, and a big-ass
Anybody
chin.
that's listening, he does. You're going to want to go watch the video because he has a solid jawline.
But, but when I went up there, I'd cut my hair shorter. And, went through the prosing, went through everything, and the guys that were judges were like, "Oh, Ed, hey, we didn't know it was you. We would have placed you higher." I'm like,
what the fuck?
Did I deserve to be placed higher? No, but we would have. I'm like, all right.
That's fucked.
Yeah. But, for that, I started going to school and everything, and I went back to powerlifting, which is what I really enjoy. I always tell people, everybody bags on each other's, like, what they do, how they coach, their philosophies, everything else. And in '95, a guy who was like a premier in the NSCA, he stood up, and it was my second year. So when I went to UTSA, there was no strength conditioning coach. There was no football then, only basketball and then the other sports. So I had interrupted the basketball practice, and the basketball coach remembered me from training David Greenwood, who was played for UCLA, played for John Wooden. And I private trained David from 88 to 91. He won a championship with the Pistons. And so he knew me from that, and he was like, "Well, we don't have a strength coach, but I got a fat one up there running, and I got a skinny one up there in the supposed weight room trying to put some weight on. Can you take weight off of one and put it on the other?" So I was up there like signing all my, getting my classes paid for and everything. Went down and talked to the athletic trainer, Jerry Greason, and I became the strength coach for $18,500 a year.
That's almost...
That was 94.
Hold on, you said 18,000?
Yeah.
Quick break from the show to remind you to hit that like and subscribe button. It helps us out, and it helps you be notified when we have new content get released. So again, please hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoy this content. And with that, let's get back to the show. Bro, I was making $22,000 my first year at Maryland, and that was in 2012. So You're fucking rich.
Yeah, I was still waiting tables downtown too, but at a better place called Dick's Last Resort, where you could. Their whole concept is rude service. You could say what you want. People are like,
yes.
"Oh, yeah,
yeah."
People
You're supposed to insult them, right?
Yep. People are like, "Oh, you work here so you can do that." I'm like, "No, I suck as a waiter. This is the only job I could get." No, fuck off, and what do you want? and they would throw money at you. I'm an ass, and they would throw money at me. And it's like, okay, this is my whole life right here. It was hard to leave that one. Actually, I started up there. I went from from UTSA, I graduated. I went to Baylor under Rob Rogers as a graduate assistant. Wish I could have taken the position at UT with Rock Gullickson and Evan Marcus. And, Evan is the strength coach. He's the strength coach with the Cardinals now. Buddy does the return to play. Evan's the strength coach. Great guy. Wanted that one because Terry Todd, we'll go into that. Terry Todd's one of my mentors and who started me on this whole path. So I wanted to go there, but $400 a month stipend as opposed to Baylor offered $1,800 a month.
Yeah. Money talks, people. Money talks.
I was 35 years old then, 36, almost 36. I gotta make the choose with money. But and then I during the lockout in '99 I was back in San Antonio and the players were locked out, and the strength coach for the Spurs gave me several players and they had them work with me.
That's awesome.
And and that's how I ended up with the Spurs. I ended up there for first 2 championships. But my first year with the Spurs, I was an intern, and if we weren't playing, I was waiting tables at Dick's. So it was do what you got to do to get there. And Steve Watterson, who was the strength coach for the Oilers, and then for the Titans, I worked training camp for him with the Oilers, and he told me to make myself invaluable.
Bro, it sounds like you are. Like this is unbelievable. Anybody listening to this as far, like, hear the things in the effort that it does take a while to get into this thing because it is that great. You got to be protective of who gets in this.
Yeah, you really do. But I started training a boxer named Jesse James Leha, was a world champion boxer, former world champion, 2-time, fought Azuma Nelson. I mean, stud, little 135 pounds. So, you're like this freaking big, can't get out of ride in SeaWorld. But great dude, really worked hard. But he was out at the high school football field when I was running some players and that. And he was like, "Oh yeah, this is Jerry Rice's workout." I'm like, really? Start looking around. He's like, "What? I'm like, there ain't no mountains here. Jerry Rice runs in the mountains." I said, I trained with Bruce Colley, who played deep offensive line for him. And I went out there. Jerry runs in the mountains. I tried to run with him. I almost died. So, no. But what he was doing was 16 110s. The normal.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
I'm like, dude, every football player in America is doing this right now. It's summertime. In 2000, 2001, everybody's doing that. So I introduced him to a med ball, the wall, and sprints. And he went from being that ex-world champion that they put guys in front of to look at and to gauge the other athlete to fighting for 3 world titles. We went down to Australia in 2003 to fight Costa Zoo. So, but like I said, so anyways, we'll go back to the original part because I'll get all over the place. Scatterbrain here.
Same. I mean, that's so both of us then.
Good. So at 95, guy gets up at the NSCA. He's like, "Hey, you're either a powerlifting guy or you're a weightlifting guy." And I'm sitting in the audience like, shit. I just starting this career, and I'm a powerlifting guy because that's what I compete at. I'm a weightlifting guy because that's what I started competing at, and I used some of it. I was a thrower as a kid. So when I went to the YMCA at 14 years old, I got sucked in with a couple of throwers, mostly so I could shag that 16-pound shot put for them.
Yeah, that's why they wanted you.
Yeah, but they taught me, so I was already running, sprinting, jumping, doing that. So our sprints were after we got done training on Saturdays. We would go out on 8 Mile because that's where it was, and that's the borderline for Detroit. And
shout out Eminem.
Yeah, punk. We would sit at this right by the stoplight, and when the stoplight would turn green, we had to sprint to the next stoplight. Traffic, everything else, we had to sprint. So yeah. And but I was like, okay. But I also used bodybuilding. I trained with a guy, Matt Mendenhall, who was Joe Weider's blonde-haired, blue-eyed boy in the 90s. So I trained with all these great people, and I use a little bit of everything. So, my rugby guys, when I trained in them, because, I trained several members, besides, I trained Ben Franks for a long time, who's a 2-time gold medalist with the Rugby World Cup, and his brother. But from 2013 to the World Cup in 15, the strength coach for the All Blacks would just give my program that I sent for Ben to the forwards, and they would train. I'm like, shit, dude, you can at least send me a pair of friggin' shorts. But Ben, Ben is awesome, and he wanted guys to train with. So the guys that really wanted to, he was showing them the program that I was doing, and making sure that he had training partners. But if you want to put some size on your shoulders, yeah, standing shoulder press, no, seated shoulder press is going to put more size on your shoulders than standing shoulder press.
Why?
Just because it's the movement is here. If you get guys that are a little bit tight and a little bit inflexible, when you start doing a shoulder press, you start leaning away, right?
Yeah.
If you're seated, you won't lean away. If you got the back there, you won't lean away.
Oh, because you have something against your back, not if you're just sitting down without it up. Gotcha.
Yeah, you're going to be able to, get those 5 to 8 reps that it takes. You're not packing meat on with 3 reps.
Yeah, he's speaking to me right now because I suck overhead and I actually need to get a lot better at it. So yeah. Yeah,
well, and a lot of guys, that thoracic mobility, and then me, this is my flexibility of my wrist from throwing for, Highland Games, throwing stones that are who the hell knows how big and everything else. So I have to be able to get in position. I can't get in position that well with a bar. I can catch it and drive it overhead. So if I do a hang clean, I'm going to catch it and drive it overhead. A lot of times I do power cleans, I'm going to do the same thing. If I snatch, it's light. It's just for some mobility in my upper back. I prefer to jump, throw med balls, that kind of stuff. So, and squat, and pull, and squat, and pull. That's the sport that picked me, and that's kind of the athletes that I work with a lot of times. That's the sport that's picking them. And those are the positions. But, I've taught, I had one 7-footer, 2 7-footers, a 6'11", 6'10", 6'7", and every one of those guys could snatch off the floor. And every one of those guys could snatch at least 80 kilos off the floor.
Would you make them do it again now, knowing what you know?
Yes.
And I'm not saying that you did it. Okay.
Yep, without issue. Because we worked at it. We worked from hang, muscle snatches where they got used to it. We did overhead squats. I still think overhead squats are probably one of the best things that you can do. One of the, who Aaron Asmus is?
Yeah,
Aaron
yes.
works for Sornex, and he does a pen and paper strength app and everything. Aaron and I come that same little era. We call it the Arby's 5 for 5. Remember when Arby's used to have 5 roast beef sandwiches for $5?
I actually do, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
No, I also remember when a $5 footlong was actually $5 because I used to go and get 2 of them for $10.50 because I'd go with a $10 bill in 2 quarters.
Yep. But the Arby's 5 for 5 for us is 5 behind the neck press, 5 overhead squats.
Like in the warm up or in training?
In training. Warm up.
Okay.
I did it at 16 weeks after open heart surgery with a zipper in my chest. I did it with 90 kilos.
Oh, geez.
So that's at 16 weeks. But knowing how to do it, and then, a lot of guys, they don't, like starting positions, you really got to look at the mechanical advantages and disadvantages with guys. If they're, I got like the 7-footers, 6'10", you get these big tall guys, not everybody's, shoulder to torso to knee to foot is going to look the same. Do you put them up on 6-inch blocks? You put them up on 12-inch blocks. Very, very seldom do we do a lot like a hang work because every time they come back down on a hang, they hyperextend their knees. Watch a guy when he unracks the hang clean. If you're a lifter, you know how to slab it into your thighs to hold onto it. Most of the guys, they don't, and it just kind of pulls down. They look like they're going into an RDL. And they'll hyperextend their knees. Al Vermeil taught me that when I spoke to him a couple of times. But, you kind of use every tool you can. And I don't think that I've ever not used a tool on somebody. So whether, there's some guys that the Olympic lifts weren't going to be great for. Some dumbbell work would be fine. And there's guys that just didn't want to do them, like Owen Franks, who's Ben's brother in all black as well. Owen loved the Olympic lifts. Ben did not like the Olympic lifts. So Owen trained with the Olympic lifts. Ben trained with a little bit of them. And that's it. You know, Ben liked to deadlift more. Owen didn't. Okay. So, you know, and that's the easy part when you're working one-on-one with people. You can't do that, you know, like in a college setting.
Yeah.
You know, you got 100 football players. You're not making that many concessions.
Yeah, no, I mean you can if they're getting older. Like for me, I would do that only with the kids that I really trusted, right? Like the kids that, you know, what I would call my refined plus athletes, where it's like, okay, I understand that maybe what I would also even do with like my kickers and punters and my quarterbacks is like, look, if we're doing hang power cleans and you don't want to do a hang power clean, we're not replacing it with curls, but if you want to do a box jump or some sort of loaded jump instead, like, hey, there's the concession for you just because your position is so different.
Right, and you have to be able to look at athletes and do that. You have to be able to kind of make those adjustments. And I've always been able to on the fly, always been able to find something else, and then be able to, you know, get them to do some of the stuff I want. But like, I get the older players, yeah, you're gonna have some nicks and niggles. You're gonna have some ouches and hurts, like I do, like you do, like everybody. So you gotta be able to train around. You have to be able to train around that, through that, or avoid that. So if I got a guy and he just doesn't want to, it just hurts too much to do this. I started using a log for power cleans, for like hang clean. Started using a log because it's nice and neutral. Yeah. Log is nice. And I get that violent hip extension. That's I don't want to hear, we don't get up on our toes. We'll get up on our toes, but we're not leaving the ground. You can't apply force to the ground if you're up in the air like a bunny rabbit. You know? So I look for that, especially for a front rower, offensive lineman, I look for that violent hip extension. And I can get that with a log, and you can rack it in that neutral position. Right?
That's a really good idea.
Yeah, so I'll use that, and I don't stop there. I always make them go overhead with it. It's going to be a catch and then drive it overhead. Just because if you have if you have the log and you catch it and, you know, you catch something heavy, you know, if too heavy, you'll start leaning back. So I use it as more of a, to kind of temper the enthusiasm. The same thing I do with me. I like to lift heavy. I only like to lift heavy. I don't believe in lifting light. Lifting light for me is 5 reps. Sometimes I'll do 8, but I can't count that high. Every time I video it, I'm like, that was 7. Oh, shit, that was 4. That wasn't even close.
I have to interrupt you real quick because one of my former assistant, Kate, she was a power lifter, and I used to bust her chops because I think it was the Disturbed song where it was like, I can only count to 5. I can only count to 5. Like instead of let the bodies hit the floor, and I was like, okay. And I was like, if you do 8, you're just counting to 4 twice. So yeah.
Yeah, I still get confused with that. Like when Louis first came out with the 8 sets of 3, I used to go get 8 marbles and put aside.
We used to use chalk on the rack.
On the rack, yeah. Well, the guy at the gym I trained at in San Antonio would have killed us when we put chalk on the rack. So we had marbles. We just put them from one pile to the other, and we still screw that up.
I could see that.
It's like, God. But so like I say, how I temper things is I'll use a thicker bar. I'll use, you know, the blue fat grips, the orange fat grips. I'll use my Iron Mind. I have a really good fat dumbbell, plate-loaded dumbbell. So in order to go as hard as I want, I do that, but I just change what I'm using. And then a lot with the masters and with some of the older athletes, I started finding ways to train around stuff. So when I got to New Zealand, his shoulders were really beat up from, you know, obviously rugby's a tough-ass sport.
Yep.
And when you're playing the front row with the All Blacks, it's a real tough sport. And so his shoulders were beat up. So I took a couple of rams down there, which were Titan. It's like a, you know, calls across, put each arm. And what it did was it gave them full range of motion, but help off the bottom. Full range instead of.
So that's essentially Mark Bell's slingshot. Before Mark Bell made his, it was before his slingshot.
Yeah. Pete Allardyce is the owner of Titan, and a real good friend of mine, and Yeah, he had. I don't know what came first, the chicken or the egg. So
Yeah,
but,
I mean, chances are, if you're talking about that back in the day, it was probably that.
yeah. So I took a few down there with him, and he was able to, get that full range of motion where everybody else wants to put a block on their chest and shorten the range of motion. I want to take you through the whole range of motion
And get some help out of the bottom. I like that.
And then same thing, my knee sleeves are sitting up on my squat rack drying from nasty ass sweat.
My staff hated my knee sleeves. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'll use knee sleeves, but when I start going heavier and at 62 years old, and I've already squatted, in the mid 800s throughout my career in powerlifting, I'm a little beat up. So I went back to my old knee wraps. Granted, these knee wraps are from 1985. The Marathon Gold Mine.
Can we send you a new pair? We'll send you a new pair.
No, Pete's given me several new pair. I go back to these. And where I used to wrap down my knee and back up, I only wrap down my knee. So I don't pull them really tight, but I can pull them tight enough to give me a little bit more support so I can get that little bit of bounce out of the bottom or, a little bit of help off the box. So I go back to the same thing. I go back to that full range of motion, but
I'm stealing that. Just so I'm
fine.
stealing that.
Yeah,
like that's
fine.
That's a really good idea.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. You really want that full range of motion. You want that full movement. Same thing. You're tight in the shoulders. You're tight in your thoracic. You got the dumbbell or the bar. You're like doing this. Get rid of it. Go one hand. One hand. I always tell the people, no rodeo. I don't want to see that other hand out here doing this shit. You put it on your belly, hold it onto something. But now if it's back here, you lose that stretch reflex across the whole body. I just get that. I can put it back in position, and I can get that, and I can start, getting the flexibility, getting everything else. So now I can get you healthy. I can get that joint full range of motion and moving. And same thing. I like kettlebell swings. I do them because I did the Highland Games for so long, and it was great. But Strongman came out with a Hungarian core blaster, and it was with just a peg, and it got a bar through it and plate loaded. So I'll use that. And it's like a double hand kettlebell, except you can load it heavier. So I really like that, and I started using that. I'll put a band on my hips. I put the band on my hips, and I'll get just tight enough that it's almost pulling me off balance. So now when I come through with that core blaster or the kettlebell, I really have to drive my hips forward otherwise it's going to pull me off balance. So my hips are more active, and I'm getting after it. So I can do that, and I usually contrast that with some med ball throws because I just love med ball throws.
Amen to that.
Always have.
My question is, with your extensive background in bodybuilding and hearing what that guy's, okay, you did it at the very least. Like you did
there
it.
You go.
And then, but hearing the guy talking about powerlifting or weightlifting, you're speaking to my soul, because I remember in my grad school where it was like, look, you're training athletes. They're not a powerlifter. They're not a bodybuilder. They're not a this. They're not a that. They're an athlete. They got to do their sport. And these are just methods to train them in the weight room.
Right.
What would be the thing that you say to a strength and conditioning coach right now that might be trying to steal or use things from bodybuilding and how, like, just how it doesn't actually translate into athletics? Because of our listeners are probably battling kids that are seeing somebody with abs that looks like a really good athlete, and they're like, oh, I want to look like so-and-so. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just speak to that.
So my era is the 80s and 90s, so a little bit more of those guys were a lot more athletic. Even the powerlifters were a lot more athletic in that era. We ran sprints, we jumped as powerlifters and everything else. So the bodybuilding, no, I don't think it. Unless you're trying to get a kid to put some weight on, you can use a few little things from it. But you're not going to squat 8s and 15s. You're not going to put them on a hack squat. That kind of stuff. I'm not putting them on a leg. We'll do leg curls, some maybe seated leg curls with a band to warm the hamstrings up. But I really don't think that it equates as well as people want it to anymore. Just like I don't think that some of the powerlifts, that's my sport. That's a sport I love. I don't think that a lot of the powerlifts equate to it. Who wants to put their legs that damn wide and think that it's going to help a football player?
Please say that again.
Yeah, I mean, It's impressive. I'm not going to say that it's not impressive, but the legs are that wide. That's not a stance. The last time I looked at somebody, and I do box squats to protect my knees, and it helps me on some things, and I do regular squats, but if you're sitting back so far trying to sit on that box, the last time I looked at somebody in that position, they were about to get trucked over. Somebody was running them over and rubbing their balls on their forehead while they're going past.
Taking a quick break from the show to talk to you guys about our sponsor, TeamBuilder. If you have any online training platform needs, TeamBuilder is the go-to place. TeamBuilder has the ability to integrate with velocity-based training tools. They have the ability to program and have notes and videos for all of your athletes and your clients. This is your number one stop shop. Been using it since 2019 when I was working at Towson. So I've used it, love it. Make sure you check it out. Go ahead, click the link down in the description. And with that, let's get back to the show.
If box squat's great with your little feet a little bit narrower, everything else, I just don't, use the wider squat, develop the hips, develop the groin, that kind of stuff. But I just don't think that heavy load, and sometimes guys just a little too much over here, and there's not enough in the middle of the road, using other tools, using other things. Yeah. It seems like guys are like, well, this is what I do. I had a really good guy that I knew when he was at U of H, competitive powerlifter. We competed on Team Titan together, but he didn't use the power lifts when he trained the football players. He used, power cleans, some deadlifts, but more of a clean pull, the hips a little bit higher position, that kind of stuff. To me, like, I will pull some things away. Like, I like the low bar squat, especially for my big guys. I think the low bar squat puts them in a better position. It gets a little bit more of that hip and ass. Right. And it's a better position. Now you also got a guy that's big and thick, and he's got some big ass traps. I got that bar only on the traps, and I don't have contact with the shoulder. So that bar's moving around. You end up with some shoulder and bicep issues too. So, and then when guys started coming out with like the Ox bar from Sornex, the Buffalo bar that Iron Mind came out with a long time ago, and some of the other curved bars, that kind of sits nice in that groove back there. Get your hands out a little bit forward so you're not really pinning back, and you're not taking a chance to get in that tendonitis that every power lifter gets at a brachialis from the bar slipping around on them. Yep. So, and you can do that, and then come back to a high bar. I think sometimes those guys get a little too much with all the cat scratch me, with all the different bars, and they get away, and you lose. So I had a shoulder injury, and I was using the safety squat bar and the ox bar a little too much while I was trying to rehab it. When I started coming back, I had lost quite a bit of mobility and had to fight for it again to get back underneath the bar. And that mobility also affected. I knew it was happening when I was struggling to shave the back of my fat roll, on the back of my head. That's where I knew I was losing some of that mobility that I wanted and I needed to keep. So, like I said, I started using that. Shoot, I've been using strongman stuff since the early 90s.
Speak to that, because I feel like that's an area that, yeah.
Well, and I met with Terry Todd in 97, and we talked. And he told me that, he kind of gave me some parameters for the strongman stuff. Farmer's walk implements, if they're long, you're going to tear somebody's bicep. If they're long, like we compete with in strongman, because when you start running or start going too fast, that thing's going to start drifting. It doesn't drift forward, it drifts out. So once it starts drifting out, you start externally rotating, that bicep's in a real bad spot. Once it starts, unless you drop it, you're not going to stop it. You're not going to pull it back in. Okay. So you'll end up hurting the bicep. So we use shorter implements, pinch grips, towels and kettlebells, one kettlebell, instead of a double load, just single load. Tires, making sure that the tire is heavy, but not too heavy. Heavy enough that it can get over. But if you make it too heavy where they're having to drive their knee and use everything else, it's going to be too heavy, you're going to get hurt. Just gave me parameters to look at and things to look at to see, and it really helped me a lot. So, and then I'd use them as a conditioning effect as well. So I started doing conditioning work with them. And I talked to my buddy Evan, who,
guys, right?
huh?
Especially
I had
the big guys.
I had my backs doing it too in rugby with Nola Gold. When I was down there, the backs loved it. I just, used a different weight for them. They picked their weight. And then, so I'll tell you, I talked to Evan. Evan and I, we both do the same kind of ideas with the conditioning and how to pick it. So I would have the guys go out and they would go, what was one of them? One of them was, we didn't have like the ski ergometers, so we used a rope, like the battle ring ropes. So they had, like 30 they had to slam in. They walked over, there was one of the yoke walks, and it's nice and fat, it's got a towel on it, so it's a little more padded for a Zercher carry. And the weight's down low, so it's not going to be swinging around, so they're not going to get hurt especially when they start fatiguing. So they pick it up, they go 30 meters or 20 meters. They get down there, so there's 2 hard exercises. You got to back them off a little bit and almost recover, but you're trying to get their heart rate up too. So it would be like, it was like 20 kettlebell swings, 15 goblet squats, 10 dips, 5 pull-ups. Jeez. And then it went to attire. Sometimes I'd let them flip the tire. Other times I was an ass, according to them. And you would jump on the tire, jump in the tire, jump on the tire, flip the tire, jump in the tire, jump on the tire, jump over, flip the tire. 5 times.
That sounds like being an ass.
Oh, it was an ass. I love it. So, and then I'd have them do something else, and then we'd come back, and it was like, all right, how many times can you get through in 30 minutes? So you take your rest where you want.
Yeah.
Push yourself. How many times? And this was in New Orleans in June. It was hot. It was humid, and these guys were killing themselves. They loved it. It was challenging to them. And they could go at their pace, and their heart rates got up, and we got work. And then right after that, the big guys from the front row, we'd all go eat all-you-can-eat sushi, and then pass out from too much rice and shit in the back of my truck. But Evan does that a lot with his guys. I still do that a lot. I still do a lot in my own training. I'll do that at least twice a week. I'll come up with some kind of circuit using the Strongman. And it's good for my heart. It keeps me up. I'm not going to run. That just beats up my knees and everything else too much.
Why is that something that you see so much with in the basketball population? Like, that's something that basketball coaches are like doing, or at least they're showing it off in social media nowadays, that they do it on Fridays. Like, why?
What's that? The
like they almost call it like Strongman Fridays.
Oh, Alan and them, Alan Bishop from U of H. And a few other guys.
Him, but like, Benetti at South Carolina women.
Really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Like, it's like people are, I think Chapman's doing it at Stanford because he was doing it at Towson. Like, it just seems like that's something where, is that coming from the head coach, you think? Or do you think it's coming from the head basketball strength coach? It's
got to come from the basketball strength coach. They have to do that. They got to be wanting to do that and add that in. I think it's great. I mean, I really do. I've had Spurs players do it that wanted to. Sean Elliott loved to do stuff like that.
Sean Elliott was a savage.
Yeah, he was. I trained him when he came back from his kidney transplant, became the first professional athlete to come back. I was the one that trained him. Sean's the one that introduced me to kettlebells.
Really?
Yep. Sean loved kettlebells. He's the one that introduced me to kettlebells. Oh, yeah, I trained him for that. That's why I put that one video up where he was making fun of me on my social media. Did you see that?
No, I didn't.
I was sitting behind the bench, and he was doing the telecast with Joel Myers, who's got a great voice. I was sitting behind the bench, chewing on my fingernail. I didn't know TV was on me, and Sean, it's on my social media. It's like, Big Ed! He's like, there's our assistant strength conditioning coach looking for more protein in his diet. It's like, oh God. Then he calls me a matzo ball. Like, then they go, talk a little bit about, the stuff that we're doing, and then, and that it was like, during the video, the trainer turns around and looks at me, and goes, "Hey, you're on the jumbotron picking your nose." I'm like, "I'm not picking my nose. I was chewing my nail." Thank God I didn't shove my finger in my nose or anything.
You weren't eating it and picking the nose and eating it like some.
Yeah, I've already been caught on camera doing a nut adjustment behind Popovich because that's where I sat. But
so what was one of the biggest takeaways from training and working with the Spurs for that long? Like people that are listening to this now, Tim Duncan and the Admiral. Like what were some of the things that you learned with them?
That if you could get them to understand what they're doing, what you want them to do, they'll do it. But if you can play to what they really like, they'll do anything. So
how do you do that?
For me, it was, and I don't know where I came from this. I had a group. We were doing some warm-ups. I was doing some, big med ball, circles and stuff like that. We were just kind of warming them up on the floor. So I wanted to do some slams. So, but I wanted to be as big in the circle as they can and come around. Not that my tight ass just was, but I was talking and they're kind of half-assed. And I'm like, listen, David. I was talking to Big David. We call him 5-0. That was his number. That was his nickname. It's like, 5-0. I said, if you get long on this pattern, you get really long on this, you get stretched out and across your core, and you really slam that down, do you know what this will do for your golf game? And he looks at me like, talk to me more, young fella. I'm like, well, first off, I'm like 10 years older than you, so I appreciate being called young. But, so I started going through like the flexibility, the mobility, don't know where I came. I said, when you got that club head back, you're really tight back there. And when you start accelerating, you're accelerating with your arms, not your hips. So that club head's turning just a little bit, and you're slicing that ball all over the place. And Terry Porter was like, oh, God, that's how he plays. They were going back and forth. So the next group is supposed to rotate through to my little area. They look at the guys, and some young ones are like, no. Danny Ferry, come on over here. Steve, come on over here. Young fellas, you guys go over there. We're doing golf fitness now. So, and then, Steve.
You got what you wanted out of
I got what I wanted, and they got what they needed. But, like, Steve Kerr played at Arizona under Meg Ritchie Stone. So so did Sean Elliott. So they knew how to do the Olympic lifts very well. Steve Kerr played under Al Vermeil at the Bulls. Steve knew how to do the Olympic lifts very well. Steve was in his, I don't know what year, 10, 12 years in the league. When he was with the Spurs in '99, he's at least 10 years in the league because my friend Dan Burke was his assistant strength coach at Arizona. He didn't want to do the Olympic lifts anymore. Okay, we'll do some scoop tosses. We'll do this. We'll do that. You don't need to do them, but you need to be strong because that's what you're going to start losing. You're going to lose that, so you need to be strong, and we need a little bit of jumps, but not maximal jumps. He's like, oh, no, I'm like, no. Maximal jumps put too much stress on that Achilles tendon. That's already beat up. So, there you go. So, I don't want to beat up on that. So I'm going to do things that are effective. It's the same thing for, like, the bigs. I like standing long jumps, but I'm not going to, right. But I don't want my big guys to land all the time. So everybody, jump up the hill. Nah, screw that. They're still landing. So I watched C.J. Hunter before the '96 Olympics, and C.J. was huge. I mean, he's a big boy. He's a big shot putter. He would do standing long jumps, and he would land on a tire. So he could explode, and he landed on the tire, so he didn't have to, take that impact of hitting. Watch Ryan Krauser now. Ryan Krauser does
now instead then?
Yeah, but if you do it to a box, you got a smaller surface. You got a big old power. You got a big old offensive lineman prop thrower. Their hips and ass are a little bit bigger than that box. They're not going to get their feet that close.
In the middle of it in the tire.
Don't land in it. Land on the tire. The nice thing is you can explode up, and then if you'll hit it. If you do, you'll just walk across it. So I started doing that, but when we were in New Orleans and the COVID hit, I took the guys out to the track. There's a really nice track in the middle of the city park. Cops didn't bother us. Nobody bothered us. We'd be out there. And they had the old pole vault pit up. It's like, pole vault pit. runway. Hey, come on, guys, let's go over here. Make them run that 30-meter sprint, and they dove into the pit. So the first 8 or 10 jumps, they were kind of like jumping and trying to figure it out. I'm like, get creative. You don't have to just dive into it. I think they did 30 jumps that day. The next 20 jumps, these guys were like Heisman Trophy poses, trying to flip, trying to roll, trying to do all this other stuff. And the coaches came out there one day, and we were doing that. So that's what we did. And go back to the same thing. That's what we did on Fridays, when we were locked down. And the coach was like, what is this stupid shit? I'm like, well, just watch them. And they watch them go, and they kind of looked. I'm like, they're getting explosive, and they're having fun. They're having a great time doing this, means they're going to put more effort into it. Yes. I played to their competitive spirit. Yes. Because now I had guys trying to jump over the damn pole vault pit. I had guys that wanted to get to the edge, or they wanted to try to get high. There were 2 of them running down there, seeing if they could cross each other. I just turned my head and not look. But they were having a good time doing it. And if you have a good time doing it, you're going to do it harder.
Oh, 100%.
Right? So, and then, after that, we were doing 400s and 200s, so I was going to destroy you anyway, so you weren't going to walk right for 2 days when I got done. So, I was going to make sure they had a good time doing it. But, like I said, you got to have fun doing it. I mean, if I didn't have fun doing what I do, lifting heavy, picking up stones, that kind of, I wouldn't do it. If it wasn't fun, I wouldn't do the damn stuff. So, I'm trying to get them outside their comfort zone, outside of what they do. They like to play basketball, rugby, football. Weight training, there's not that many that like it as much as we think they do.
100% agreed. And how do you handle that fun with, still getting work done? Because if any of our listeners are right now like, okay, well, I want to have fun with them, but like, I also got a coach breathing down my neck. How do you handle that duality?
I think that's your own. I don't know. Honestly, that's kind of a good question, a good thing to think about. I get them to buy in. I've always been lucky that I could get them to buy in and to what I want them to do. And
the coach or the player?
The players. Coaches, for the most part, they're kind of hard. Coach Pop is awesome, but like my old boss Brungy said, he knows just enough to be dangerous.
Ooh.
So he would, he throw his 2 cents in here or there. Other coaches, like Coach Egan, who was Pop's coach at Air Force Academy, great dude. So one day I was in charge of, because my boss was on jury duty. He gave me the paper that he wanted done. I'm like, yeah, that's great. I ain't doing that. So I got, the speed ladders out, some cones, some other stuff, and we were doing, we were working out, and we were doing stuff. But Coach Egan comes in, he goes, "Oh man, that looks a lot like football." I'm like, what? He goes, the cones and this and that. I'm like, oh, you're right. Son of a bitch, you're right. Oh my God. I started kicking the cones, picking up the speed ladder and throwing it. He's like, oh. I'm like, no. Everybody on the line, let's just go ahead and backpedal, really slow down the floor, because that's what basketball does. And he kind of looked at me. He's like, fuck you, fat ass. And he just walked off. But he pulls me aside. He goes, you know what? You're right. The sprints, the stuff like that, that's what they need to be doing. So he was good with that. Pop left us alone for the most part. I don't think that the guys that were the coaches in New Orleans really knew or cared about the weight room as much as some of the players did. And the players, once they started, they were really bought in. Once I got there, so they had somebody doing it first. This guy Bum that owned the gym in New Orleans, West Bank Athletic Club, phenomenal gym in New Orleans. Bum is a great dude. He was training them really hard and everything. And when I was getting ready to move there, Bum was like, I need to concentrate on my gym. Ed can do the strength coach. You guys can hire him. Well, before I got there, I ripped my Achilles, so I was kind of sidelined for a little bit. And they had one of the players doing it. And he would just write some shit on a grease board. The grease board coach, write it up there, different every day. And I come in and it's like, okay, this is what we're going to do. So I start going through it. Back's got this. Loose forwards have this. Tight forwards have this. We start going through. I tell them why. Within 2 weeks, the backs begged me, not the forwards that I mostly work with, the backs, the fast guys, begged me for another day of work. Begged me to come out to the pitch to do more work with them out there.
That's dope.
And it was like, okay. They're like, oh, you're really good at this. I'm like, because I'm 280 pounds, 5 foot, almost 10, that's the sport that picked me. It doesn't mean that's the only sport I know. At UTSA, I worked with track and field. At Baylor, I worked with track and field at Baylor for a year and a half. That's one of the greatest track programs in the country, under Clyde Hart. Michael Johnson used to come in there and all the way from Dallas at least once a week to do his workouts with his coach Clyde Hart and Danny Brabham. So I know what I'm doing with that. I worked in the NBA. I was a thrower at first. Everybody Jones is on the videos with Werner Gunther, right? The videos.
God, they go crazy.
Okay. One of his old training partners was Mike Throws coach at the club that I threw for when I was stationed in Germany in the Army. I've done all that. Yeah, I've done all the sprints. I've done all the jumps. I've done the heavy behind the neck push press. That's why the article on my website was on the heavy behind the neck push press. I've done 455-pound behind the neck push press.
Talk your shit.
But, it's like, so we do this, and then they would watch, and they watched me train once, and just like the Spurs players when they saw me. Of course, when I was in New Orleans, I'm, almost 60 years old, got 2 blown Achilles, healing and everything else, so different. But when I was with the Spurs, they would see me, I would duck off during when they were training, when we were on the road or something, I'd duck off into the weight room if I knew the strength coach and get a good lift in. Like Cleveland, Stan Keller was at Cleveland. Was a great guy, had a great weight room. Dwight Dobb, who I knew through the NSCA when he was with the Seattle when they still had a team. When I had places like that I could go, I would do that. But the players would see me and they would freak out at what I could do. Like, I even freaked, as great as he is, I freaked Tommy Moffitt out. A couple of his strength coaches, I got a chance to lift in his weight room and watch him, hitting power snatches with 110 kilos. He's like, you're a year out from bypass surgery. You got wire in your sternum. You're hitting 110 kilos? Like, yeah. And then go over there, squat 250 kilos and everything else. Like, that's just what I like to do. I have fun. I buy into it. So through that, I think that through that, I'm able to get guys to do things that they wouldn't normally think about doing. Like Ben Franks, he was already lifting. He was already a good lifter. He liked to lift. Like, he was out for a little bit with a broken foot. He rented a building and decided he wanted to put a gym there. It's like, so, when he was playing. But when in 2006, I went down to the Crusaders in Christchurch to work camp underneath a guy named Ashley Jones, who's a real good friend of mine. Ben says he walked into the weight room, and there was a guy walking back with 160 kilos on the bar, which was more than most of the guys were squatting, and I put it over my head 3 times for a triple and a push press. And he's like, just gravitated towards me. So a lot of guys, they think that, and they say it, that, your physical presence or what you can do, guys don't care. But the players and the athletes, they do care. And it doesn't that, like Jimmy Ratcliffe, who was great at the plyos and everything else. I took a course from him and Vern Gambetta once before the 96 clinic conference in the NSCA. If you're talking about plyos and everything else and explosiveness, and you walk over to a box and you do the shit that Jimmy Ratcliffe can do, they're going to listen to you.
100%. 100%.
If you walk in, and you don't have to be, I don't mean you got to be the biggest guy in the room. I don't know where the hell my shoulders came from because nobody in my family looks like I do. I swear to God, my mom was having an affair with the milkman. So I even asked her. She told me no. Son of a bitch. So it's like, that's just kind of what I like to do and how I like to show off. But I don't want to be that immovable object that I can't move. So that's why I threw, and that's when I picked up the Highland Games. There, to me, that was my sport, and that perfect blend of I got to be strong, but I got to be quick. And then my OCD of I had to learn how to throw these implements and the technique that was involved in that. And now I'm trying to learn how to throw another set of implements. Went out to a meet that's I can't remember what they call it. It's like the throws pentathlon for masters. So you throw like a heel turn, you throw like a hammer, both hands on a pud. I think it's 25, 44, 56, something else. But then you throw underhand, almost like the core blaster or like a kettlebell. It's long, 100 pounds and 200 pounds for distance. So you swing this thing between your legs and then throw it out there in a sand pit. It's like, okay, that looked like fun. So I started doing that and like, okay, now I have to learn how to throw. And I have to learn how to do this and not get hurt. Because I think
if done anything, anybody listening now, they might be like, yeah, fuck yeah. Like he's speaking to my soul in terms of lifting heavy, sprinting heavy, throwing heavy shit. Are you also, did you ever do any like combatives, BJJ, kickboxing, any of that type of stuff?
No, I wrestled some in high school. When I trained the boxer, I got in there with him, and I realized I don't know how to fight. I know how to street fight. I grew up on the east side of Detroit. I know how to street fight. Yeah. But the other stuff, it just doesn't interest me that much. More power to the guys that do it. It looks like it's kind of fun. It's just not something that interests me as much. When I trained James, the boxer, I got in there. I had all this headgear and stuff on. I was supposed to lean on him, and then he was supposed to punch, and get out. He was learning, doing some combinations for a fight we were getting ready for. It was like, okay, and I'm like, James, I'm gonna get you. No, you're not. I'm like, I'm gonna light your ass up. No, you're not. So I learned how to box like everybody else at the YMCA's in Detroit. All over around. Learned how to do all that. So when I decided I was going to hit him, this hand wanted nothing to do with it. So it just dropped down here somewhere. This hand decided that this wasn't the best line to go, that it was like, go way over here and expose this giant ass head. So this one's here, and James just pat, 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 pat. And then hit me one more time in the nose. My nose started trickling with blood. I took off the gloves. I'm like, I don't want to fucking play no more.
I'm taking my ball, I'm going home.
I'm taking my gloves, I'm going home. So, yeah, all that's kind of fun, but I just don't. And then I see how screwed up some of the guys get from it, and not purposely. I mean, your boy Kira, I look at him, like his hands and his knees and stuff, I'm like, nah, I'm already beat up. I don't need to get more beat up.
Or the ears, too, right? Like,
oh, yeah, no kidding. That cauliflower ear is just...
What has been the, the common denominator that you have found with all of these high-level people? Because you have been around some very impressive human beings. What is the biggest takeaway that you've learned from them, that you have applied in your world of coaching, and then that you would recommend to our members and listeners to do as strength and conditioning coaches, athletic trainers, physical therapists, because we have a wide gambit of people that listen to this?
Right. The one thing I learned, especially from the era that I was in, is they study. They study their sport. They study their craft more than you would ever believe. And this is before a lot of the video analysis and everything else. So I'll give you one example is, Mario Elias, right?
I do.
Played for the... Worked his ass off, played in Israel, played in South America, played all over the place to make it he won a championship with us with the Spurs. He won a championship before us with the Rockets. Okay. Avery Johnson's a stud, right? No. Avery Johnson got cut on Christmas. Avery Johnson got cut on David Robinson's wedding day, and he was the best man.
Fuck.
Avery worked his ass off to get in the league and to stay in the league. So
Avery was a stud. There was nothing like when I did the Avery Johnson voice. That was me trying to pay some homage.
Yeah, you just gotta have more teeth.
Avery
He got
Johnson.
like 15 extra teeth. I used to just sit there and look at him because he'd call me Eid. I'm like, what? Put up his hand, and the ball boy had given him a half a cup of water instead of a quarter cup, so I'd pour some out and hand it back to him. But so, anyways, it was Jerome Kersey, God rest his soul, who was one of my dearest friends. He played for Portland Trailblazers and then played for us. So I would go pick up food, and I would go over to either Jerome's house or Mario's house. When TNT had games on Tuesday, Thursday, if we weren't playing. Yep. All right, we'd all meet up. So Avery would be at home with his family on speakerphone, Mario and Jerome with me, and we'd be eating, and they'd be watching the game. No video analysis. They're watching the game on TNT. And they're going as it's going, and they're breaking the game down. They're breaking the players down. They're breaking everything down that's happening because they're going to play these teams. Yep. They've played them before. These guys have been in the league for 10 plus years. They know it, but they're still studying it, and they're still studying every bit of it. And then they're looking at me like, hey, you need to make so-and-so on, whoever it was on the team better at that point, like down in the paint. So-and-so needs to be a little stronger here, needs to be a little bit better there. I take notes.
That's so cool.
Same thing. A couple of kids that I private trained, their dads played in the NBA. I would go watch these kids that I trained, and I would sit behind these three dads. Everything they said, as they broke down how their kids were doing, they would tell me what the kid needed, and I would write it down, and I had to come up with stuff. So you have to study your craft. You have to study the sports that you work in as well. When I started working with Ben Franks, I played rugby, but not at that level and not in that era. So when I was there in 2011, in the evenings at dinner time, I would get a homework assignment from him.
From who?
We would watch a scrum video, or we would watch this and that, or we would watch a game on TV, and then in the morning he and I would discuss it, and I had to come up with the strategies to make him better at that. So I had to study that sport. I had to study every bit of it. Not enough strength coaches go out and watch the practices, I don't think. And granted, sometimes you're stuck in a weight room and you don't have time to get out there.
Sometimes they do, but other times they're just fucking standing around bullshitting and not actually studying. It fucking annoys me.
That's annoying, because this is what I look like at training camp with the Houston Oilers. That's how old I am. And this is what I look like with the San Antonio Spurs. I got not this towel, but I got a Gatorade towel over this shoulder. I got water over here just in case somebody needs it, because if they hit the floor, I'm going to get out there. I'm going to wipe up the floor. I got another towel right there. A player needs a towel. I'm going to be right there, but I'm going to be down in the paint, or I'm going to be over here watching. I'm going to watch everything I can, and I'm going to listen to the coaches. Now, granted, I have a big advantage. I sat right behind one of the greatest coaches in history.
Correct.
I sat directly behind Popovich.
Now, I'll caveat this with to speak into that. Yes, there are too many coaches that stay in the weight room and they don't go outside.
Stay in their comfort zone.
They suck on the field. There's also the coaches that just fucking bullshit either with the players, the athletic trainers, or with their staff and don't do a fucking thing when they're watching practice. There are some that are doing a great job in studying and learning. Right. My question to you is, at what point after you've studied and you've learned, and I'm not saying that you've ever arrived, but every day watching practice versus there could be other things that you could productively be doing. How do you handle that duality?
I take care of what I need to take care of. I mean, if the practice is going to be an intense practice, I want to be out there. I can wait on my stuff. If it's not going to be an intense practice, then I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and go take care of my things. That's all I did. Is of course I had the script before. Pop was real good. Everybody had a script on what was going to happen. I had to be out there for warm-ups in the morning, get the guys ready to stretch. The athletic trainer might have some stuff for me to do. He didn't have an assistant for a while, so I was his pseudo assistant.
I did that one time. Sorry to interrupt you. Go back.
Oh,
I
that's
did
fine.
That when my old assistant Kyle Cherry, he never had an assistant that would stick around because the fucking guy that was above Kyle was a bad human being that treated people like shit. That's a different side story. But I was Kyle, I filled in to try to help out. I wasn't taping ankles, but he'd give me we'd work together where I'd work in the athletic training room with him during the camp of 2021, and it's fun.
It's fun, yeah. It's because it's different. I learned a lot of my
guys like it.
Yeah, I learned a lot of my rehab stuff in there. I learned a lot of the ankle stuff and knee stuff, shoulder stuff I do right now, I learned from Will. But I helped him. And here's the best part about helping him. In the NBA, the athletic trainer runs it all.
Really?
He's the top dog. Okay?
Okay.
He's also in charge of travel. So if I want to go on, Will Sevening, who's the trainer for the Spurs, he was I don't know, maybe not now, but he was in charge of the travel.
Seats somewhere. You needed your boy.
Well, yeah, we had our seats on the plane, but he was also in charge of the per diem. And so a lot of times if I was going at the last time, I just get my per diem in cash. Don't listen, IRS.
Straight
Per diem.
cash, homie.
Straight cash, homie. And he'd give me like $500-600. He's like, hey, if you run out, let me know.
Hey,
Fuck, I ran out.
oops, sorry.
Yeah,
Didn't
I'm
mean
taking
to,
food.
but I
I'm
did.
taking food from the plane back to the hotel room, But he's also in charge of the hotel rooms, all the other stuff. So I did stuff for him because he did things for me too. But I helped him because that's what I was taught. Make yourself invaluable. Before I got to Baylor, I can't remember who it was. A guy named Caesar was one of Rob Rogers' graduate assistants. And Caesar talked about being in baseball. He was in baseball. So he said during training camp for them, the pitching coach came by. All the strength coaches were standing in this little area. The pitching coach comes by. He goes, "Hey, who can throw batting practice? You just got to lob meatballs in. Who can throw batting practice?" These guys all looking at each other. Caesar's like, "Hey, yeah, I can lob it in." And he goes, "All right, well, get out there and do that." He goes, "You other idiots, you ain't gonna do shit in fucking baseball if that's your attitude," and walked off. And that was the thing. If you're only gonna do just your one thing, that's the same thing as, my wife works in laboratories. She's a director of quality now. I mean, she's worked her way up from a bench tech all the way through.
Yep.
You don't tell her ever, "That's not my job." You do what you got to do for the team. Now, I was an Army Ranger, so I believe in the team, period. So if it's the athletic trainer, the head strength conditioning coach, Mike Brungart, and me, we're a team. Yep. We have a task to do, and I don't care what it is. I support the team, and that's what I have to do. There were times where, I wanted to go do this or that, but, I had to do something else. Somebody else needed something. Okay. This is the reason that, a lot of times I could never lift. So when at Baylor, I would lift after everybody else. And I was in charge of, the fat boys.
Team?
Pardon?
The team?
Yeah.
You would be lifting the team after?
Yeah, well, I would lift them. My sports that I was assigned have to help football. And then I had to go to the chow hall with the football team and watch the fat boys to make sure they, that better selections on their tray, which means I got to eat for free. So I was good. And then I would go home. I'd shower up, clean up a little bit. I'd go to, back then, the only Starbucks was at Barnes & Noble. So I'd hit, this is 97. Get me a cup double espresso. Yeah. And then I would go back to the weight room at 10 o'clock at night, and I'd lift till midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning.
Psycho.
And, get up and do it all over again. But that's what time I could lift, and that's what time I could be undisturbed in my lift. As opposed to, because if somebody comes in, like when I had a private facility in Houston, if somebody comes in early, I have to stop what I'm doing and take care of them. Same thing for, I'm sure in college it's the same thing. You have to stop and take care of the task. So just learn how to work around things. But to me, most strength coaches really honestly study the sport. That's how you're going to get better at not just programming the exercises and all of that. You have to know the language that they speak.
Yes.
And don't ever try to bullshit them, because as soon as you bullshit them, your credibility is gone. You may as well leave. You're never going to get it back. True. So that was the one big takeaway that I could do is you got to be able to. You got to find a way to get them to do the stuff you want. Like I said, you want them to do. I mean, I've spent a long time trying to convince basketball players that they needed to squat, a little bit lower than that's not even close, buddy. And you got to tell them why. You got to tell them how it's going to help their ankle flexibility. I met with the scrum coach for the All Blacks when they came to play Ireland in Chicago, and Steve Hansen, who's the head coach, comes through the hotel lobby. He's like, "Oh, Ed, it's really nice to meet you. I'm Steve Hansen, the All Blacks head coach." I'm like, "Yeah, I didn't know who you are, sir. I just pissed on myself a little bit, And so a couple other guys come by. He goes, "Oh yeah, watch out! Here comes Mike Crone. Mike Crono's the All Black scrum coach. Gotcha. Big presence, right? Like head over everybody else. He comes to me. He goes, "Yeah, I'm going to leave you to it with Crono. He wants to talk to you." And Crono's first words out of his mouth before he ever, and we've met each other, but he didn't remember, was, "Why the fuck do my forwards all want to train with you? Come on, let's go to my room." And the players were like, we go up there, we start talking, and it's like, this is why I do this, this is why I do that. And he's just amazed. And as much as, Gilly is a great strength coach for the All Blacks and all that, the one phrase that I remember Crono yelling out is, "Why the fuck doesn't my strength coach think like that?" When I talked about the front row guys doing heavy barbell rows, heavy pulls, not just power cleans, but heavy pulls, because you want that. This is the body position for a row. That's the body position for a scrum. If you break in a row at the thoracic spine, you're screwed, right? If you break in a thoracic spine on a scrum, the whole scrum collapses. You're screwed. So there's a lot of things that go back and forth. You have to study that. I had to study that. I didn't just pull it out of my ass, And then we started talking about squats. Well, why do you want low? I'm like, well, because I want ankle flexibility. Get rid of the Olympic lifting shoes. I squat in flats. I squat in throw shoes. Or Adidas makes a nice zero drop or something like that, they call it. I like the zero shoes, but I don't really like they're a little too flimsy. You know what I mean? But the Olympic lifting shoes, yeah, they're great for an Olympic lifter, but I'm not an Olympic lifter. I want to be flat. I want those ankles to be good and everything. So we talked about that. And then we talked about like bar placement, or hand placement on the bar. Is that your kid?
You're good.
Yeah, it's all right.
All
right, that's fine.
You're
good.
Keep going.
But it's like, I'm like, yeah, you want those, the hands in a little bit tighter. And he's like, well, no, sometimes they're like, that thoracic spine, that thoracic mobility and strength right there to hold that position is important. Because if I'm scrummaging, I got one arm over here and I got one arm over my head here. It's not out here. So I'm going to get the flexibility that I need here.
Yeah.
So I'm going to use that squat to develop some of that flexibility, to develop some of that mobility. It's not just for the leg strength. It's not just for that. So learned how to do that, like good mornings, and then other stuff that I did with him, and that he loved it. He liked it so much that I would get messages from him all the time for the next couple of years until he retired. So, asking me this, asking me that, and it's like I had to learn the language. I had to learn the sport. Even though I played the sport, I had to learn the sport.
Ooh, that's really good. That's really humbling to hear, because I feel like, myself included, and other people might think like, hey, you kind of know it, but like, do you know the intricacies of the nuance within the coach that you're working for?
Right. Yep. And that's something you really got to know, and that's why you go to practice. For me, for rugby, when I worked in rugby, especially when I was in New Orleans, I used to ask the coaches down there, I don't think those idiots even knew what the hell they were doing sometimes. How do you play? Do you play fast? Do you play slow? South Africa plays a certain way. The All Blacks play a certain way. England plays a certain way. Because World Cup is going on. That's, I've used that. Fiji plays a certain way. Those guys are animals.
But they could answer you with an actual answer, correct?
Right. But not...
Okay, anybody that's listening to this, because I can, like, when I would have coaches, my old coaching staff, and I think this is part of the reason that they got rid of me at Towson was... they were like, oh, we're gonna practice fast. We're practicing fast. And in the staff meeting, I was like, hey guys, like, you know, the head coach was like, okay, Justin actually been giving, you know, me some data. And he's like, hey, Justin, why don't you speak to it? And I'm like, hey guys, you know, we're all saying the word fast. Not a single player ran faster than 17 miles an hour in practice today. You are doing dense work. There's a lot of work in a short amount of time. You are doing really condensed field space. And so rather than being like the guy that just brought something up and didn't have a suggestion, I was like, hey, if we just expand the length of the field, we'll let them open up and do things further and faster. And they were like, fuck this guy, he's got to go. Like,
Yeah. They all love the data until the data shows them that they're not doing the shit right.
and so that's where it's like, how do you make sure everybody's on the same page with the same terminology? Right? Like,
That's hard. That's hard. That comes from the top. That comes from your head coaches.
yeah.
I mean, head coaches got to have that and got to have the balls to come out with that. I mean, I use like my buddy Evan down in with the Cardinals right now. He said he's got one of the best situations that he's ever had in 30 years of coaching.
Why is that?
The coach really believes in the weight room. They believe in what he's doing. He's not just on a peripheral as a task. They believe in it. The defensive coordinator sends his assistant coaches in there to lift in the morning.
Lift with the guys, or
No, they'll lift on their own, and Evan will help them.
okay.
So they understand what these guys are doing. Aaron told me that, like Pete Carroll, if an assistant coach, during the guys were out there stretching and all that, if an assistant coach was out there jacking around with a player, Pete Carroll would rip you a new ass.
You're speaking to my fucking soul here. Yes.
Yeah, this is my time. Right. And I did it. Oh, God. I do not know how I've gotten away with the shit that I've gotten away with sometimes. Like, Pop interrupted me a couple of times. We were doing some stuff. I was doing some stuff in the weight room. And, you know, you can't say anything. So I'm just kind of sitting over there rolling my eyes. And players are fucking cracking up, throwing shit at me, you know, because they know they can read it. And then he leaves and he goes and, you know, whatever. He did that a couple of times. So one time we were having a loose practice. It was only veterans were home, and Pop is the master of load management. You know, there are certain times where vets are going to stay home. You know, young guys are going to be there. You know, that kind of stuff, or when he sits players. So he was going through something. I'm like, no, that's not it. And he just looked at me, and I grabbed the board from him, from Popovich. I grabbed the board. I swipe it off. I'm like, no. I say, listen. So-and-so, you need to go down here to the paint. I know you're little at 6'2", but you need to get your butt in the paint. You need to be here. You know, so-and-so, I need you way out here on the edge, and I need you to... Sean Elliott's cracking up. Duncan is rolling, right? And like, this is going to work, guys. And Pop's like, get the fuck out of here, fat ass, because that's the only thing Pop called me. He's like, grabs the clipboard from me. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, shit, coach. Just the other day, you came in the weight room, you thought you were a strength coach. So, fuck, I'm a basketball coach now. I sit right behind you. I know everything.
Fucking let's go.
He broke the clipboard on my head. He literally hit me in the head and broke the clipboard. That little board, you know, their writing board there, he broke it on my head. But, yeah, he called me fat ass my entire time there. And I was in charge of fines, time. So if you're late, went to the Spurs, if you were late, it was $1,000 plus $100 a minute. And all you would hear was, fat ass, start a clock. Click. I start my watch. And when the guy would come in, until his shoes were tied and he was on the floor, that I was supposed to keep time. And guys were like, cut, it costed me all kinds of money. So that was my, they freaking, I'm like, nah, if you were one of them little dickheads, I'm like, nah, I took it till you were in position. You know,
You could have been like, I'll cut you a deal. It's only $75. I'll get the clock a little late, bro.
Yeah. Well, the best part is that he would take that fine money, he would throw it in the middle of the floor in cash, and they would have shooting games.
Oh.
I have shooting games for like $15,000, $20,000 sometimes. In hundreds. And then, you know, you got my ass outside the weight room door with a hat, like a fucking tip jar. You know, because I'd help a little bit. You know, it was only 2 balls, 2 teams, and you weren't supposed to help. But if you were down there and the ball went out of bounds, you kind of helped a little bit. Guys from the other team would, you know, start ragging at you and everything. But if you forgot to tip me, yeah, I'd kick the ball in the stands. You can go shag it. Or I'd stand right next to it. Who the hell didn't tip him last time? Like, at least throw a couple $100 bills in the hat.
Hey,
Brunky and I got to eat. Hey, we got to eat.
Amen to that, brother.
But it's, like I said, it's being personable. It's doing that. Like, after games, I had guys especially with the Spurs, we'd lift after games, some of them, like a lot of starters. Finish them out.
Just because they were already fatigued or what?
Right, because they were already fatigued and we wanted to start that healing and everything, and they wouldn't have to do it the next day.
Yeah.
But I would come in the weight room, I'd jump up on the desk, you know, start, you know, telling people what we had going. If you didn't play 20 minutes, you had to condition for 20 minutes. So I was in charge of that. And guys would know that I'm very bad with a stopwatch. They're like, how much more time? Like, 5 seconds, which means it's like another extra minute over. I just didn't pay attention. Guys are like, dude, you need to find you a girlfriend. You cannot have this much fucking energy at fucking 10 o'clock at night. Like, guys, I love what I do. And I think that's the biggest takeaway for a lot of guys is I absolutely love being a strength conditioning coach. I saw an article in Strength and Health magazine in the 1970s, and it was a guy named Bob Colfer. I can't remember Dr. Colfer's first name. I'm drawing a blank on him. And anyways, it showed this guy at St. Bonaventure. Big old dude, 70s big old upper body, little skinny ass legs. He was the strength coach / cross country coach at St. Bonaventure.
Okay. I remember 70s Big. That was like a website, right?
Yeah, but it's different. 70s Big was big upper body, small legs. Oh. Even the bodybuilders from that era, big upper body, small legs. So I put that up in my room as a kid. And I said Terry Todd was one of my mentors. In 77, we moved from Detroit up to northern Michigan. And I was pissed off. I was out in the garage lifting with the little weights that I had and stuff because now I'm not at the YMCA anymore. And my stepfather, who's a Lutheran minister, called me in the house. 77 World's Strongest Man was being played. Terry Todd was right there, you know, and everything. And then inside of Strength and Health magazine was an ad the next, I don't know how long later, for Inside Powerlifting, the book that Terry wrote. And I begged for that. And I got that in probably 79. And I went in the Army. And I had that book. And I carried it ever since. So when I was at Fort Polk in Louisiana, I went down to Austin where Terry was for a powerlifting meet and to watch. And I talked to Terry about getting into powerlifting. He introduced me to his cousin, told me to go find him down in Corpus. I used to drive from 6.5 hours from Fort Polk, Louisiana to Corpus Christi for the weekend, every other weekend, every third weekend if I was off duty, just so I could lift weights with these guys. And then I would go back and I would show up just in time for formation. Like, I would drive through the night, shit, shower, shave, and be in formation for PT at 6 a.m. and start my day. Monday was a rough day. But, you know, I did that because that's what I wanted to do. I really do love what I do. Unfortunately, sometimes, and I've heard coaches say it, the biggest compliment I ever got was the Richie, whatever his name is, was the trainer for the Detroit Pistons. He likes to stand outside the huddle and just sit there like this and sit and stare at the other team. So I did the same thing back. And Will had been with the Pacers, so I'm like, "What the hell's up with that?" He goes, "Oh, he does that shit all the time." And when he walked by Will, he goes, "Hey, who the fuck is ZZ Top on steroids back there?" Like, goatees down to here and everything. But I had another coach with the Austin Rugby Club told my buddy who was the strength coach, he goes, "You know, that's, you know, so-and-so." It's like, "Oh yeah, he looks like all strength, no conditioning." I'm like, ooh. It's like, yeah, I'm fitter than you. I'm fitter than you'll ever believe. But you, motherfucker. Yeah, no kidding. But it was like, that's not the sport that picked me, but that's not the way I coach. You know, I got picked to powerlift. I love basketball. I'm 5'10". I couldn't shoot a basket. I used to play horse with the guys. I would have Z. I played alphabet. They played horse. I would have a Z before anyone had an O. But they would fucking do anything for me because I would play. You know, because I would get in there and play, they would do anything I asked them to do. You know, but that's it. Is like, I do this because this is what I really do love it, and because I love it so much, I study it. You know, I experiment on myself. I experiment with others. I have fun. I have a fucking blast. I always have.
You're speaking to strength coaches right now. What would you say needs to change to make it great and to make it better again?
I don't know. I think I've been out of it for several years. That honestly, the pay needs to be better, and we all know that.
Yeah.
But I get tired of watching coaches lose their jobs. There's no continuity for the kids.
Yes.
You know, strength coaches have more contact with these kids than any other coach. And, you know, just because you change staffs doesn't mean everybody has to be a whole. It's funny how the athletic trainer never goes.
Right.
Athletic trainer never goes.
Right.
But the strength coach is packing his shit. You know, he's been there for 2 years. What effect did you have on in 2 years? You haven't had an effect yet. You really haven't. You know, the guy that I met with from Australia, my buddy Dan, he's been with the Melbourne Storm for 17 years.
Wow.
He is the strength and this is the setup this is the setup I want. He is the strength and power coach. He has another guy on staff that does the speed and conditioning.
Oh.
And they get along perfect. They've been together for like 15 years. They have a director of performance who kind of oversees everything, and the athletic trainer, physio. Those four guys get along great. They're all on the same page and everything else. But 17 years as the strength coach means you have had an effect that continues to go.
And
you
the
know?
kids can come back and show their families, and they're like, it's how good that is.
Yeah, that's exactly it. You know, and he gets to establish his family in buy a home and everything else. You know, there ain't nothing worse than, you know, getting fired, and every coach knows you're going to get fired. Yes. Why? You know, everybody else gets to stay in their job. If I had to do it again, honestly, I think I would go to a major university, and I would go straight to the Olympic sports side. Because I look at Donnie Mabe, who is at University of Texas. Donnie won a national championship with he's going to kill me if I forget, Georgia Bulldogs. He was a big old defensive lineman. That man was jacked. Yeah. And he's a great strength coach. But he left. He was with Mad Dog for a while, and he got that opportunity to go to the Olympic side. Yeah. He's never getting fired.
Yeah, no, and anybody that's listening to this that might work in football, like, going Olympic and working with swim and dive, because those kids are fucking tough, and it's a big group of kids.
Yeah.
That'll scratch the itch.
That's, people don't realize some of these other sports, my softball girls would kill themselves.
Women's ice hockey are a bunch of fucking savages.
Really? Oh, that would be cool.
They trained so much harder than the guys did, at least at Harvard and at least back in 2011 and 12. The guys,
really?
A bunch of just motherfucker, they didn't want to do shit. The girls, bro, they got the fuck after.
That was when I got to Baylor, I don't know where that reputation came from or anything like that, but the softball coach, Paula Jones, came in. We were sitting there, we were getting our assignments and for GA, and she looked at Rob, she says, "Hey, that's Ed, right?" And I looked, I was like, I don't know you. She's like, "Yeah, I'm Paul, I'm the softball coach, Chicky Mason, who was your coach at UTS." I'm like, "Yeah, Chicky and I get along really well." She goes, "Yeah, Rob, I want him." And Rob's like, "Well, I gave him," she goes, "You hear what I just said? I want him." And she walked out. And Rob's like, "I guess you got softball." I said, "Hey, coach, y'all don't do that cheerleading shit in the dugout, do you?" She goes, "No." I'm like, "Okay, I'll go to softball." So I had softball opening, one of my first days, I had softball and women's basketball, right?
Oh, nice.
So I get there early. I'm at the Farrell Center. Then there was a little weight room. So I get there early, like I'm supposed to. I get, the recovery drinks and all that kind of stuff set up. I get all these different, back then they only had power bars, chewing on
RX,
fucking,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Sandpaper bars.
Yep. But I had all the different flavors out. I brought them over from the stadium and everything. So I had everything laid out. So the softball girls get done training, and the basketball girls are coming in, and they're talking, and I see all these girls damn near crying and stuff. I'm like, what did I do? They're talking, they're emotional, and they leave. And, my basketball girls get going. I'm like, hey, just like I told the softball girls, y'all grab some of those power bars and take them with you. They're good snacks throughout the day. And you can have as many as you want. We got tons of them. And they're like, we only knew that there was malt nut. I'm like, oh my God, malt nut is horrible. I'm like, there's chocolate, there's this, there's that. And I said, they're all right here. She goes, no, you don't understand, Coach. No one has ever brought us that. No one's ever told us that. We've never had cold, it's not Gatorade, whatever knockoff Dr. Pepper fucking shit they had, because it was Dr.
All
Pepper was
sport back in
sponsored.
the
Yeah,
day.
there you go. And that, it's like, so I got called up to the softball coach's office, and a couple of the other coaches were in there. I'm like, what did I do? She goes, the girls have never been treated like athletes before until you. They always got treated like second-class citizens because everybody wants to work with football.
Good for you.
I'm like, wow, okay. Well, football sucks at Baylor at that time. We won 2 games that season. Everybody got fired. But I was like, no, I was assigned to them. I'm going to do what I need to do for them.
Preach.
I go over and warm them up, go to class, come back. Fucking people at Baylor try to go to class in a pair of green shorts and a gray T-shirt. And I changed in the parking lot because I already soaked through it. I got that damn whatever that red clay shit is on the softball fields all over my socks and shoe. Yeah. And I'm at Baylor, and those people are looking at me like, "Are you really in graduate school, boy? I don't think you even belong at this school.
How'd you get in here?
How'd you get here? Are you Baptist?
How'd you get in?
Hey, security."
You know what? I'm going to speak to that too, because I filled in for the women's lacrosse team earlier this year when their strength coach was on the road with a team in conference championship, and those girls, it was like the first time they've ever actually been coached. And the last day I was like, hey, it's been awesome getting to work with you. I'm still going to be around, but it's been a pleasure to get to work with you. And they literally broke it down on we love Lima. And then they kept just talking about how the difference and how they got coached. And they were talking about it in the athletic training room. And my head football athletic trainer was like, bro, what the fuck? He's like, they haven't stopped talking about how they got treated differently. I'm like, bro, I was just assigned to help and train them during this period of time. So that's what I'm going to do. Nothing else matters during that time. I'm supposed to be with them. I'm going to fucking train them. It's that simple.
Yeah, and I'm going to have fun doing it, and I'm going to, I'm going to coach.
It's going to be a blast.
Yeah, and I'm going to coach.
Wearing shorts and a T-shirt.
Right. That's it.
That's the thing that so many people forget.
That's the same thing I would talk about when I was at the Spurs or any place else that I've stopped. Look at where I'm at. Look what I get to do.
You said it. You were a ranger. You saw real shit.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And now we've got coaches. I literally had somebody tell me, and the rest of the staff, that wearing a hat on the floor coaching was unprofessional. I was like, I pulled them aside. I was like, you're not fucking serious, are you? I didn't say fuck, but I was like, come on now. Are we going to start wearing polos? What the fuck are we talking about? We're working in college athletics, man.
Right. The only time you're going to see me in a polo was behind the bench or on game day. And that was after I got done warming, and we had to. And that was after I got done warming them up. And, I see somebody put up stuff coaches from the 80s and 90s had your shirt tucked in. I'm like, yeah, I looked professional. That's what I was doing. It was a polo and it was tucked in because it's a 3XL, and 3XL goes down to my knees.
Amen.
That's why Aaron gives me the nickname 3XL Stout. I need 3XL in the shoulders, not just so much in the length. Because he gave me a T-shirt when he first started with Sornex. He gave me a T-shirt, and it's a great shirt. I put it on. It drops down way past my shorts because I still wear shorts.
Nightgown? It's a
Yep.
nightgown?
I looked. I was like, oh well, hell. I put my lifting belt on. I'm like, fuck. I'm ready to go out. And I went ahead and took my shorts off. It was like, sweet. What the hell are you doing? I'm like, hey, it's a dress. I look good. Let's go.
Get your
Buy me dinner.
lifting shoes on as your high heels and elevate you.
Oh yeah, yeah. Nah, it's fall.
What is something that like you just feel to help get, because there's so much technology in strength and conditioning right now. Do you think it's good or bad? Or are you indifferent?
I'm slightly indifferent, but I think what a lot of the technology is doing is coaches are losing what we would call a coach's eye. They don't know what they're looking for. They rely on that technology, and they're here instead of here. You know, I know that because I have one. I have a Tendo unit in here. I can cheat that son of a gun anytime.
Amen.
You know, I can cheat that jump mat too.
Amen.
But, and I can use it, the jump mat, for a little bit of stuff. But if I'm going to test a vertical, sports you reach for stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm testing on a Vertex. And at the gym I had in Houston, I took like baseballs, put a little eye bolt in them and a rope, and I threw it over the rafters. It was a big warehouse. I threw it over the rafters, and I would set there was one at 7 feet, 7'6", 8'6", all the way up to 12 feet. So it gave the guy something to try to swat at to make it swing. They tried to break it, but that's the competitive side of them.
Yep.
But
Moses
you know,
did that down at New England with, he'd have like hanging from the ceiling, it would have like, it would say the height of it. So it would be a little bit longer for short and same thing.
Yeah, and it's fun. It gets in competitive. Hey, I'll go back to the old way of testing vertical, where you used to take and put chalk on their fingertips and then go up and try to reach above it. You know, but I understand some of it. I don't understand a lot of that technology that's used in high school. Like you are spending all this money on technology. You really just they need to be strong in high school. They're high school. It's strength that they lack, especially with like
IMG is fucking it up by doing what they're doing.
Is that what it is?
Dude, IMG down there, like you see their videos and stuff, like you see that they got Tendo units and bands and chains. I'm like, what in the actual fuck are you doing? Like the kids, you maybe have like a 14-year-old, 16-year-old. You know what I mean? Like, stop.
That was at NOLA. I had two guys that were two Canadian players, and they were doing and I love Cal Dietz, and I've talked to them so many times and everything else, but they were doing French contrast. I'm like, dude, even with the band-assisted jump, you still got a fucking credit card vertical.
Amen. Or I see these.
And you're not leaving the ground in your sport.
They're doing an oscillating row with 40 pounds. I'm like, bro, your athlete literally can't even do a single-arm dumbbell row with a 100-pound dumbbell.
Yeah.
Cut the shit.
Yeah. Well, it was, talking to Chrono, like I said, he was like, oh, yeah, row, let me show him. Like, Chrono, if you show me the video of this one player of his doing an 80-kilo row, I will throw up and leave this room. And he starts laughing. He goes, well, I'm like, here's a video for you. I was like, here's me. And I handed it to him. He goes, how much is that? I'm like, that's 185 kilos. But your back doesn't move. You're not moving while you're doing it. I'm like, no, I'm not. And you're not going to move. You're not going to move me if we're scrummaging. You know, it's strong positions. And that's what people don't realize. Like these high school kids, my high school basketball players, before they could be more explosive or anything else, they needed to be strong. I got a kid that's 15 years old. He's 6'7". He's got a size 16 shoe. It takes some strength to pick that big long lever up and pick that big ass shoe up. You know? Will Perdue was 7 foot tall. You know he had a size 20 shoe?
Jesus.
He had a pair of weightlifting shoes. Al Vermeil had a pair of weightlifting shoes made for him from Adidas. They just sawed a fucking 2x4 in half and boom, put it down.
There you go. There's your shoe, bro.
Yeah, but it's like they need to be strong. In high school, they need to be strong. And if you're a coach, you should be able to look and see if that bar's moving fast.
Yes.
I can see it.
I like the gamification of it for a little bit.
Yeah.
But that's outside of that. It's like, man, come on now.
Put it on there for a couple of training cycles. You know, put it on there for a 4-week block or something. Maybe you're doing like you're trying to do some speed squats, and I like to speed squat with a band. So it's, you know, I'm going to explode up and the bar's not going to go anywhere. That's why I like the band to kind of temper it and hold it on to me. So yeah, put it in front of them on that. Hey, you know, you got to do 5 triples. Make sure that your marks are here. You know,
I legitimately saw a coach programming chain speed rear foot elevated squats with the shoulder saver bar and only like a singular chain, or maybe like a 25-pound plate and a chain. I was like, what the fuck are we doing?
That's not doing anything.
What is going on?
And I'm sorry, this will make all this will make strength coach Twitter cry, but single leg squat is an accessory movement. It's not a prime mover.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, it's not a prime mover.
Say it.
2 feet on the ground. I played rugby with 2 feet on the ground. If I pick up
throwing a pure single leg squat, or are you saying when you're in a bilateral split stance, so a split squat rear foot?
Well, all right. So if you're in a bilateral split squat, isn't that both feet on the ground?
It kind of is. Isn't
It kind of is.
It is.
I'll use, and I do them fairly heavy. I hold on to the rack though. I'm not making it a balance thing. I do single leg squats. I do step ups. I'm a big believer in different variation box step ups. You know, low box is going to hit that quad. Higher the box is going to hit that ass and those hammies. I also take the load from down next to me, or a kettlebell load here, and I take the load overhead.
Okay.
You know, there's three different ways. I'll do split squats that way. I do single leg squats. I've done 405 with a bar, not a safety squat bar, for a triple and a single leg squat with my leg back on the single leg squat thing. So, you know, it didn't equate to my 854 pound squat either, but it's what I've done. It's effective. Like some of my basketball guys couldn't go down deep in the squat and everything like that, so we would squat, and then we would use step ups to get the rest of what I wanted, and I could get some flexibility out of it. But I really don't think that I'm going to program heavy split squats. And the one thing, and like I said, I like to do them. I believe in them, and I do them like after heavy pulls. Like on a heavy day that I'm going to heavy pull, that's going to be my first movement is a split squat. You know,
I actually do that too. With the deadlift, same day of a deadlift,
Yeah.
I would do my unilateral work,
Yep.
and then it would be like an RDL with a back squat day.
There you go. Yeah, that's it. That's what I like to do, and I feel it's real effective. Now, if I see you slam your knee down on the ground, or even if it's on an Airtex pad, I will throw shit at you. Control. I don't want to slam that knee down on the ground. That's why I don't like. I like the Nordics, but I don't like them. Because every time I've done them and somebody holds, for some reason, when my kneecap gets pushed back in like that, it just tracks. It just beats the shit out of my knee.
That's why I like the GHRs.
Right. That's why I like the GHR a whole lot better than that. And if I'm 60-something years old and as big as I am and everything, and I can do glute ham raise, then you can do glute ham raise. I can do them correctly. You can do them correctly. And then what I do with glute ham raise is I roll over and do the old school Roman chair sit up. Tuck that chin down, get that stretch on those hip flexors.
Yes,
Get that stretch on those hip flexors all the way down to that lower ab. That'll make a man out of your ass. The same thing as doing overhead squats. I mean, I like overhead squats. Now, not everybody can do overhead squats with a bar. Do overhead squats with a kettlebell.
I like bands.
I haven't tried it with band.
The band, rather than the dowel, or like just let the band get pulled apart, right? And it actually it'll help turn on your core, your whatever freaking
whatever
word
you want to
use. But I've noticed that it helps. I like it.
Oh, that's cool. I'm gonna have to try that.
You know, give it a shot with start with a lighter band, heavy, increase with it. Like it's a great movement to add into a warm up or within some version of a complex.
Yeah, I always throw a complex in at the beginning or the end of my training because I got to keep my heart healthy. I do, I have the wonderfulness of the scar from sleep apnea, where most guys, and that's one of my things that I do with the old strong guys rule, that hashtag I started. I wanted it to be more education inspiration and motivation for the masters, not just athletes, but everybody. Like Joey Batson reached out to me after he had his bypass surgery, the strength coach for Clemson. Several other guys. I want to give them the information that I didn't get and a little bit of help that I didn't get, but it's also trying to keep that I don't know, just trying to keep them going with that. So mine was, my sleep apnea was so bad for so many years, and I didn't know that's what it was. Nobody said anything. Spurs players just didn't allow me to sleep on the same floor. That was the running joke. But when I got with Sally and we went away for a trip out to Pleasanton, California for nationals for me for throwing in the Scottish Games, we almost never made it back. She almost killed me because I snored so loud. She couldn't sleep. Like I woke up and tried to find her. She was in the bathtub with the blanket and pillows over her head. Poor thing. I mean, but I didn't know. So she's like, no, you are going to get a sleep study. And then I learned the damage that I did to my heart. And then later that year, several years later, I blew my Achilles. And I had my left Achilles. And I had 9 additional surgeries from infections. I had an ass hat for a doctor. And I fought for my life from sepsis. I had 3 surgeries in San Antonio 4 months after, and when I got to move to Houston, it was building my gym there. It exploded, and 2 pieces came out of my ankle. They looked like 2 pieces of cloth. I'm a meathead. I grabbed them, tried to pull them out, passed out. They were my Kevlar tendon graft for the ankle surgery did as well. So I went to the hospital. A couple of days later, they wanted to take me into surgery immediately, but my heart wasn't working properly, they said. So I had to go get a scan. I go to a heart specialist that they sent me to. I'm cleared. Heart's fine. I had the surgery. He comes out. He tells Sally, well, we're able to save his leg for now. And she just looked like, what? And they had the amputation tools in there in case it was in the bone. So I had 4 more surgeries. I had surgery every couple days. Didn't walk. I didn't walk from December till August. I was on crutches or a boot. And then I rehabbed and got going. The doctor looked at me. I was trying to get more rehab from him, like physical therapy. He goes, well, they give a massage, this and that. I'm like, yeah, He goes, listen, I looked at your website. I've listened to you. You know more than a physical therapist. Go get your work done. So I got in the pool. I did all the work, come back. 2 years later, my heart stops. And, I have a blockage. And my Widowmaker was blocked. I stood up in my room, in the living room, passed out, hit the ground. That compression restarted my heart, or at least put it back into correct rhythm again. But I couldn't walk, so I crawled on my hands and knees into the bedroom to wake my wife up, and waited for an ambulance. Well, actually, I'm dumb because I was like, I just got indigestion. Go get me a Coke, so I could burp. And I went and took a shower, and because I was sweating so much. And then we drove to the hospital because I didn't want to wait for an EMS unit. EMS ain't that great sometimes. We got about halfway there. We didn't know where we were. We couldn't remember where the hospital was. I'm like, I'm over here doing this shit to myself. And we pulled into a med clinic. The guy says, hey, how you feel? Like, I feel like dog shit. What do you think I'm doing here? Fuck. He's like, yeah, you're in the middle of a massive heart attack. I'm like, oh, all right. He goes, well, we're sending you over Memorial Hermann. It's across the street. I'm like, okay. Like this. He goes, where are you going? I'm like, well, I walked in this motherfucker. He goes, yeah, and the ambulance is taking you across the street. I got over there. They had given me heparin, so I couldn't have the stent put in. I had to wait, otherwise I'd bleed out. So they were waiting, and the doctor was talking to me. He's a great doctor. I still go see him. I mean, I used to travel from New Orleans back to Houston just to see him every 6 months. So anyways, I coded once in the elevator. I coded again on the table. Nitro paste, sternum rubs. He's like, how you feel? I'm like, fucking elephant on my chest. And we're talking, and he's getting the catheter, getting ready to get the catheter in my vein in my leg, and he's talking to me some more. He's like, "Oh, how you feeling?" I'm like, "I don't know, doc, but they're having a fucking barbecue, and there's 2 rhinos up there too, so you need to hurry this." And I just keep yelling "fuck" all the time. So a couple minutes in, he yells "fuck" really loud. I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Oh, nothing. I just hadn't heard you in a while." Then he tells me I need bypass surgery and everything. That was devastating to both Sally and myself because that's not what I'm supposed to have. And he explains some things to me, tells me how tough I am, tells me everything. I know this. I know that I'm going to be fine, maybe. But what hit me the hardest was a few months later when I went to one of my checkups. I went with, Sally came with me, and she walked me through what she went through, what I didn't understand.
Yep.
The waiting room,
Yep.
my name up on the board. She's in the medical field. She knows what different things are, that I was dead when the bypass machine was working for me while they were preparing my heart. She walked me through that. She was a rock star in that. She had set meals in the refrigerator when I got home. I would walk her to the car. I had to do my walk, and I'd go back. I'd take a nap. I had meals and snacks. She had all that set up while she's working, running the microbiology department at her laboratory and everything. It's like just a friggin' rock star with it. And then, but like I said, those and what she did, what she went through, what she talked to me about, that's what I tried to share with. And this is honestly, this is the first time I've got to share this. So, yeah, it's hard.
That's heavy.
It's 10 years. It's almost 10 years. November, I do a nuclear dye stress test. It'll be my 3rd one. My heart's doing great. As great as it's gonna. I keep it healthy. I eat well. Dropping body weight. I dropped from 285 down to 260. I'm actually going to do my own little video here pretty soon. I'm going to lose the XXX stout. Hashtag, I'm going to go down to XX stout. I don't need to be that heavy. I need to take care of myself a little bit better. For too long, I kind of chased it where, yeah, fuck no, I'm superhuman. I can get all this, but nah. And that's the part with like coaches, they don't take care of themselves, and those are the ones I want to talk to. And I'd like for the NSCA to be able to talk to them about finding ways to make their own heart healthy. And not all of us are going to run, and not all of us want to walk, but there's ways of doing it in the weight room. Those strongman circuits are a way to do them. Doing some circuits are a way to do them. Lifting a little faster. I got a pace. When I lift and train, I don't really rest very much. I superset a lot of stuff. So I just those are the things I want to share with everybody else. So
we're gonna make that happen because I'm actually having the guy that hosts the NSCA podcast. He's coming on the show. I don't know when anybody's going to listen to this or when it's going to air. Today's October 20th, so he's coming on in November, and his episode's probably going to air in January, but we're going to find a way to make this happen because more people need to hear that part.
Yeah, and that's with all the stuff that I do and everything like that, I think the old strong guys rule the master stuff. I think that's where my passion really lies, and I've not been true to it where I've not been able to share it. I tried to share it once at Summer Strong with Sornex. Bert had me come out there. I go out there anyways, but had me come out there, and that's what I was supposed to, and I couldn't do it. I just wasn't ready to do it. And then some of the guys that are out there that are like me, that were operators, they're the ones that helped me a lot. Rudy Reyes, who's a stud. I mean, Jesus, Rudy was such a badass that they made a movie out of him. And he's a LRP, Long Range Recon Patrol for the Marines. Yeah. And Rudy is like legit badass. And those are the guys that helped me a lot. But still hard to share. Still hard to kind of, and I want to be able to share that. I want to be able to organize my thoughts a lot better and get that out and how I do these things and what I do. And I'd love, like I said, I've been a member of the NSCA since '89. I'd love to be able to talk and be able to, these are the things that you can do to keep your heart healthy. You keep your heart healthy, keep your mind healthy. If one's not healthy, the other's not healthy.
I don't think there's a better spot to stop this, because I could talk to you all day. What I'm going to do, I'm going to do my part to continue to share this with the NSCA, and we're going to share this with the world.
Cool.
I appreciate you sharing your story, and I want to speak truth to it, because I've been there where speaking about things, like, I get emotional, and my wife and I literally just talked about that earlier in the day, and like, I go, listen, how do you think I go, Megan, you cry, how do you think it feels to be me, a 250-pound former offensive lineman that gets emotional about things? Like, it ain't easy, you know.
Yeah, wear that heart on the sleeve on some things.
Yep, it's not easy, you know?
Stuff like that, and how much I love my wife. Those are the two things that
Amen to that. Like,
you know?
I 100%, I feel you on that, and I just want to say I appreciate you for being on this show. And
I appreciate that opportunity. I will. You too, man.
Congratulations on making it to the end of the video. Why don't you celebrate by watching more videos just like it? You can also help us on our quest to placate the algorithm gods by liking, sharing, subscribing, and commenting. Thank you.